welcome to our special programming from Davos. I'm not there, Vikram is, but just before we hand over to him, the big story out of there, of course, has been US President Donald Trump's much-awaited speech at the World Economic Forum, where Trump essentially said that America first does not mean America alone. As he faces mounting criticism for his protectionist policies, Trump said that America is open to business and competitive again. He also spoke about terrorism and ensuring that Afghanistan wouldn't become a terror safe haven again. Vikram Chandra now joining us from Davos with an analysis of that. Vikram, this was a very keenly watched speech by the US president, and of course the fact that it's Trump in particular, his speech. What are the reactions there?
But you know, personally, I thought that's not the sort of a speech to deliver at a Davos closing plenary. Maybe that's just me. We started off Davos with Narendra Modi, who at the end of the day spoke largely about globalization and India's place in the world and global factors like that. The Trump speech is a little bit more about, perhaps with the domestic audience, what he's doing to make America great, all the steps that have been taken, tax reforms and the rest of it. At one time, and somewhat unprecedented, the hall did boo him and hiss him when he got into another one of his favorite themes, which is attacking the press and saying the press is fake and biased and unfair to him. But I do have Ajit Gulabchand with me, who has a slightly different take on Donald Trump and on the speech. Ajit, you felt the speech was actually a good speech.
It was a very good speech. It outlined what Trump had to say about the position of America in order to improve the prosperity and security of America and also that of the world, and had a slightly alternative prescription to how to go about it. Not different in the very fundamentals, but in the way of doing it. So I thought he did that. One knows that there is lots of prejudice in the case of Trump, and a lot of things come out of that prejudice, which creates a narrative based on that. And then everything is viewed through that.
The prejudice was mentioned even in the introduction to him, and again the crowd hissed and booed.
But that's okay. There were 30 people who were supposed to walk out in the crowd. Nobody walked out. Finally, only one lady walked out. So it failed, that whole plan. So this also happened here. The fundamental idea is not about booing Trump. Here is the President of America. What America does matters. It does have a serious influence on the world. Take his tax reforms. It means everybody in the world will have to lower taxes. They will have to spend more on defense so we can improve the security of the world. And I think the regulation, even in India, the regulation is becoming strangulatory. And when the West grew, there were no regulations. And when listen, just one moment. So as a result, he's talking about cutting regulation. He is talking about improving the spend on security, and etc. I think, and also other political and legal measures to ensure security. I thought that was outlining what he is doing and clarifying it personally to a large business and decision-making audience.
Let me just play devil's advocate out here, since we have nobody else to play devil's advocate out here. Let me play devil's advocate out here. Here's the thing. I understand if Donald Trump goes into New York, goes to Wall Street, makes a speech like that, isn't it wonderful that the stock market is rising and I've cut taxation and I'm cutting regulation and, we must think about America and America first and all this. He did say America first doesn't mean America alone, which was something which he tossed out, to the fact that this is in Davos.
He didn't toss out, he said so.
Okay, so that was something which the Davos crowd would.
This is.
Now, can I just ask you?
This is attributing.
Supposing at the opening speech, which Narendra Modi made, he'd come out here and essentially spoken about, well, India's done A, B, C, D, and Beti Bachao, and this and that, and all the local steps. Perhaps his speech wouldn't have. What I'm trying to say is, at a global audience, should you only be talking about how great you are and how great your country is?
I'm not going to agree with any idea that Trump was wrong in what he did. It's very clear. Let me be where I come from. First of all, his mentioning the stock market, his mentioning the return of money into America, including Apple's enormous investment, was to show the proof of his policy, not to show only talking to the domestic audience, but to the world, because he invited the world to invest, like Modi did. welcome everybody.
But the difference, Ajit, if I could just take you on that, the difference is that America is being seen as the leader of the world. Yeah. It's the leader of the free world. Yeah. Now, when the leader of the world or the leader of the global community comes to a global forum like Davos and says, I'm really thinking about my own country, and everyone else should think about their own country.
I'm sorry, he did not say that.
It's a different message to what the leader of India
Vikram,
said
he
earlier.
did not say that. He said America. He said for coming to a better security and a shared agreement, everybody must look at his own country first, and then look at it together. But not America alone, which he said very clarity. He said there has been an unfair way of certain rules that got established were unfair, and some people were taking. So in that context, he spoke. I have done this, and these are the fruits of that, and therefore there is some. So it's a test of what I have done.
Okay, but
so I thought that was necessary.
I'm just trying to ask that this is the first time an American president has spoken at Davos for, I don't know, a couple of decades, right?
Two decades,
right?
Yeah.
We had the leader of China coming here last year and really saying we will like to play a global leadership position. We had Narendra Modi coming out earlier this week and saying India should play a role as a leader of the world, and here are the reasons why India should do this. Both of them were at a slightly higher level.
No, wait.
So in a sense, okay,
wait. Sorry, I was here last year when she spoke. Xi Jinping was very clear. America had just pulled out of the Paris Agreement. He used that to do a little bit of a sleight of hand to make people laugh and say, okay. And if people felt, you think this special crowd, this great decision maker thinker bought that story, that he's going to be the now leader of the free world when he oppresses his own people? I'm sorry, no.
Okay, so contrast the opening speech for me.
So I'm saying, as far as Xi Jinping's speech was concerned, I don't want to comment that it was a bad speech. It was a very ordinary speech. But use this little happening.
All right, let's wrap up Davos. We are at the end of it. You're heading back.
At the end.
So contrast the opening speech by Narendra Modi and the closing speech by Donald Trump.
Narendra Modi's speech was welcomed by me and was a wonderful speech for one reason. Since Jawaharlal Nehru, no Prime Minister of India has articulated India's space in the world, India's role in the world, and that it's a force for good, and because it's both a democracy and it's in its DNA for millennia to be like that. So I think that was a wonderful positioning that Prime Minister Modi put our country in, and I felt proud about it.
All right.
But equally true that there was so much criticism about America, and particularly Trump.
Right.
I thought his clarification was required. I think he did a good job of it.
Well, it's a pleasure and a privilege to have with us Joseph Stiglitz, one of the world's top economic thinkers. And it's always great to talk to you and get your view of where the world is at. But before I ask you where the world is at, I wanted to just get your reaction to the Donald Trump speech. What did you make of it?
It was better than it could have been. I think a lot of people were worrying about a disaster, but his handlers kept his speech very short. When he was asked questions after his speech, when he wasn't so scripted, he repeated himself, and he couldn't help himself going after the press, talking about fake news, where he got booed, hissed. The content of the speech, though, was in many ways a big disappointment. I was here last year when President Xi gave his speech. The contrast was amazing. President Xi gave a long speech, a vision, describing a broader view of the multilateral system, and the role of the emerging markets, how it was changing. This was an attempt to defend American first policy.
And to say, the salesman's job, come invest in India, come and invest in America, I beg your pardon.
It was a sales job, but a very unconvincing sales job. He talked about cooperation. You look at what is the most important thing that everybody around the world now needs to cooperate? Climate change. Because if we don't, we're frying. And to put it in a very clear way. And the United States is the only country now to announce that it's withdrawing. That's the antithesis of cooperation.
So you were contrasting his speech with what President Xi said last year, but even Narendra Modi of India is kicking off Davos this year, made climate change one of the first things that he talked about and the need to get everyone together on it, and for globalization. We heard similar global messages coming in from Macron, from Trudeau, from Theresa May, from all of them. So that contrast, I think, is again something that will be noticed.
Oh, very much so. And then when you contrast then the quality of leadership that you saw from Macron or from Trudeau of Canada, leaders that were thinking about their country's problems and the world's problems. Trudeau talking about gender inequality, a problem all over the world, raising it, elevating the importance of it. There was a kind of vision of what kind of a society we can be. You didn't get that. This was a...
Some would say perhaps just as well, considering the sort of views that could have come from Donald Trump.
Exactly. His vision, I mean, as you say, it could have been worse because he could have expressed his vision and that would have been a nightmare.
All of us would have got shocked and said, my God, what on earth is this?
Exactly. So he didn't instill, not that many people walked out. There's some that did, but it was very clear from the tepid response that he didn't move the people here.
Right. So just wanted to get you, it's rare to have you with us. I just wanted to get your sense of where we actually are, not to help wrap up Davos right now for us. Where is the global economy? How do you think we are doing? Better or worse than we were a year ago?
Oh, I think we're doing better than we were a year ago. I think we have to look at it in a little broader perspective. We had a global financial crisis in 2008. For a variety of reasons, pulling out of that crisis has been very hard. Political problems in the United States. The Republicans, who now just passed a tax bill that gives money from raises the taxes on the middle class and reduces taxes on corporations and leaves a deficit of between $1 and $2 trillion. Back in 2009 and 10, when we needed the stimulus, they said, no, we can't have a deficit of that magnitude. So we're doing better, as I say, as we come out of that long crisis. And China has managed a slowdown impressively. And in fact, last year, there was a little bit of a fillip to growth, better than was expected.
And when you look at other countries like India, for example, how's that looking to you right now?
Well, India went through this peculiar experiment of demonetization. People looking around the world at demonetization couldn't figure out what you were doing because what you did was to hamper small businesses because you took away the currency that they needed, and you reintroduced small currency, so you didn't solve the problem that you said you were attacking, which was corruption and all that. So when you look at it, it's a mystery of why you did that to your economy, but in spite of that, a lot of the fundamentals of the Indian economy are good, and you're doing well. One thing that bothers me an awful lot is your agriculture sector, because it's not growing very fast, but equally, it's not environmentally sustainable. And we're already seeing the effects of climate change, drought. You're taking away your water table. And I worry for the future of Indian agriculture and the lack of focus on the environmental sustainability.
All right, Professor Stiglitz, always a pleasure to have you
nice
with us.
to be
Thank
here.
you so much for talking to us. Right, so we're continuing to try and analyze Donald Trump's speech and what it meant, and perhaps try and wrap up what Davos 2018 in general meant. So, Sani Bundock, it's great to have you with us. You're a business presenter with the BBC. And I have to say, it's great we've been having you as neighbors to us for a long period of time. And I really can't imagine why we didn't think of poaching somebody from there to get their comments all week long. But here you are, and it's great. What did you make of the speech?
Well, I felt it was completely on message, the speech itself. There were no surprises in there. There was nothing too controversial in there either. He didn't talk really very much about geopolitics. He mentioned North Korea, but apart from that, he didn't really go off message. It was all about the strength of the US economy, and he sort of seemed to take quite a bit of credit for that. He mentioned the significant changes that he says has happened in the last 12 months, thanks to his presidency and his changes and his reforms, and how that's helped tremendously the American people. But also he talked a lot about the fact that America is open for business. We want to do trade. We want to do fair and reciprocal trade, something he kept underlining. But because we're so strong, this is the place to invest. This is the place to build your factory. This is the place to create jobs. So he was kind of rolling out the red carpet.
My question is really whether that would have been the right speech. Would you have expected a slightly different speech at her closing address at Davos? I mean, that would be fantastic if he was in North Carolina or Tennessee or
Philadelphia.
Texas or Philadelphia. I mean, I get it. But at Davos, would you have expected a slightly broader message?
I think definitely from the other world leaders, listening to Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Narendra Modi of India, of course, and the other leaders that were here, France's Emmanuel Macron, it was very much a global conversation, a speech that was about many issues, not just their own country, whereas Donald Trump kept it all about the United States and how strong and
almost
important.
saying every country should think about themselves first. He threw out that little bit of a thing saying America first doesn't mean America alone, but it was pretty much I'm taking care of America, that's what I'm doing.
Exactly, and he's been saying that openly. I'm a cheerleader for my country in the same way that a business chief executive should be a cheerleader for his or her company. And he's open and clear about that, and he doesn't apologize for that either. And that's kind of how he is. That's what we're having to get used to, this new president of the United States, that if you want to do business with us, this is how we operate.
So no walkouts. He did get booed when he went off, when he started attacking the press.
Yes, probably by the press who were there. I would imagine it was the journalists that were booing at the time.
But it seemed to be fairly extensive. I don't know how many members of the press were there, but Sani, it's been great having you. I just want to welcome Daniel Yergin to join us as well. Just wanted to get your take on the Donald Trump speech.
Well, I think you have to start by contrasting to where we were last year when he had been elected, and this community here at Davos was in total shock and thought it was the end of globalization, the world economy was going to go down, stock markets were going to go down, and instead what happened is that, of course, this strong, almost unexpected global synchronized boom, and he's taking credit for it. And I think what he was here really doing was taking a very big victory lap. And as you pointed out, it certainly was a speech. This was not about a speech about global problems. This was, as he said, he was a cheerleader. He was America's chief marketer. He's saying it's a thing that other heads of state do, say, come invest in our country. But it's unusual for the American president to say, come and invest, and I can promise you a great deal.
But is it fair for him to take credit for all that's happened? I'm just putting it out there. I mean, yes, he's right. The American stock market has boomed and boomed and boomed. And,
well, I remember last year at Davos, there was a real split between the international business people who thought the whole thing's over, and American business people said, well, you know, tax cuts, deregulation, maybe this won't be so bad. And so I think on some things he's delivered. And it's particularly that you didn't get a whole new weight of regulation coming in, and at the same time, you know, this tax cut and this pro-business environment. So that's been a big factor, and it's hardly the only thing. You know, when you have economies down, they come up. But I think the strength of this, finally, this global synchronized boom, there are a lot of factors at work. What's happening in India is very important as well.
Right. So, Sandy, just wanted to ask you that, you know, if you're contrasted, if you take a look at this entire year, there's been a lot of challenges in other areas, not least what he's saying on immigration, some of the other comments he makes, what's happening with women and gender issues, and there are lots and lots of problems. On the economy, has he on balance done done better than you would have expected a year ago? Which I think is a point that Daniel is making.
I think when he started his presidency, the US economy was already recovering very nicely. Many would argue that the reason why the American economy and the global economy is doing well right now is it's a cyclical recovery 10 years on from the financial crisis of 2008. So it's not necessarily all down to his changes and reforms. I mean, in terms of reforms, we've only really seen the tax cuts in terms of reform. Many other reforms he's tried to push through haven't happened yet. Healthcare, for example, and other areas. Immigration, many would argue that some of his policies and ideas have made it very difficult for businesses, especially in the area of technology. So for him to take all the credit for the growth and the surge in the financial markets as well in this last 12 months, many would argue he can't do that. But
right, and there were some conciliatory things. His statement that maybe he'd reconsider TPP.
Yes, that was interesting.
Yeah, that he's kind of reaching out, and I think it's probably an eye-opener for him to be here too. I mean, he never came to Davos before.
Yeah, but no American president has actually come to Davos.
No, that's
well,
not
no,
Bill
that's
Clinton.
not true. Bill Clinton came in 2000.
He was quite some time back, the 17 years ago.
Right. And I think this is the flip.
long.
This is the flip side, because remember Xi Jinping last year gave the great "I'm the new person in charge of globalization," and which used to be an American president.
Which, in a sense, you know, even the Narendra Modi speech was a bit like, you know, multipolar, and let's had some other people stepping up for global leadership, sort of a speech.
Yeah, his speech was very important, and of course he emphasized global interdependence in his speech.
And also he pointed out the concern and the fear about privatization, not privatization,
of protectionism,
sorry,
climate change.
becoming more to the fore, and he did highlight the dangers of that, which was quite interesting as well.
So what was your overall take on the, I just want to get Randall Lane in also, but your overall take on that, on Modi's speech, and comparing and contrasting it with what Trump said? What's been the basic feedback? I mean, sometimes we get caught into our own little ideological, you know, what has happened, looking at it from an Indian point of view. What's been some of the international reaction to the Modi speech?
Well, the international reaction to Prime Minister Modi's speech has been very, very positive. I must admit, I've mainly spoken to Indian businessmen and women about what he had to say and how important it is that he's actually here. Quite a few of them did indicate, and not just Indian business people, but across the board, that they felt that Narendra Modi being here was very, very important this year, given the fact that President Xi was here last year. That if India wants to exert itself on the global stage, it's important that he is at these kind of events. And the fact that he was the head of state that kicked off the entire week and set the tone for the week, many felt that was a very positive thing.
Yeah.
Randall Lane, let me get you in on that. Your take on the Trump speech, and feel free to weigh in on anything else at Davos, including the Narendra Modi speech.
Well, I think the Trump speech is the story today, and he came in, as Daniel said, I heard, he came in, remember last year, he was inaugurated during Davos. It felt like a funeral here. He comes in today with low expectations. The statement is that he came. That's the big story. He stayed on message. And listen, this is what Donald Trump knows how to do. He knows how to pitch a deal. And today he was pitching, invest in America, here's why America's back. And I thought he did it very well. He stayed on message. He didn't go off message. And even when he was doing the Q&A afterwards, he stayed on message, which I guess was surprising. We'll see if he tweets something to then walk it back. But I think you come out of this going, okay, he came.
He did get booed once when he started attacking the press.
Again, relative, yes, but relative, and that's, he's experienced that over the last year. But relative to the expectations, and also in terms of him coming in and kind of basically opening up and saying, America's doing great. We're open for business. I want to do bilateral deals, and again, we know that, but it's the statement of coming and discussing that actually probably did him more good than harm.
So it was very interesting. Prime Minister Modi. It's a bookend of Prime Minister Modi at the beginning and Donald Trump at the end, and I think Prime Minister Modi certainly really made very clear India's global position, and I think for the business community, the international business community, India just looms larger and larger as the growth market and the demographics that support it. So Prime Minister Modi had a very internationalist view. Donald Trump had, as you said, he was a marketing man.
America-centric view and a marketing view. That, I think, is actually the interesting point that I was asking at the early stages. There's nothing wrong with pitching a deal, and he did that, and he went on.
But he does.
He said, this is what I should do with America. I guess the question comes as the leader of the free world, or the leader of, America has been the global leader for a while, especially here in Davos.
Yes.
So to say I'm thinking about America is sometimes seen as an abdication of global leadership.
Yes.
And the creation of a vacuum that therefore others should.
Of course, if you saw Macron's speech too this week, he was basically raising his hand as well and saying we'll step up. Trudeau from Canada is stepping up. So clear, and I don't think Trump has a problem with that. He keeps on emphasizing that a lot of the world has to pay their own way, and We don't necessarily, I think in some ways this is a tactical decision. And so it's not that Trump is losing America's interest as much as he is intentionally pulling back and others are stepping up. So I don't think he would dispute that, actually.
But one thing, can I just, one thing to note, it was interesting, one thing he said, the U.S. is the largest economy in the world. That is an answer to China. Of course, on a purchasing power basis, China is a larger economy, but on an exchange rate, the United States is, and he just wanted to say,
well, he actually said by far,
yeah,
it is the largest economy, but not by far.
Yeah, right, but it depends how you measure it too, but that was the statement he wanted to say. He does go in for a little bit of exaggeration.
There's nothing. I'm curious as to how the rest of America sees that, because, you know, the abdication of global leadership, it's almost like, you know, giving up the throne. Yeah. And then you have everyone else sort of saying, okay, we want to step into that throne.
Listen, we're only a year in, we're only 1 year in, and this is all playing out. The things he's correct about, or was correct about, the American economy is very strong right now. The world economy is pretty strong right now. Again, a lot of that was set in motion before he became president, but he's very good at taking numbers. And again, you have to look at him, you can't look at him as a one-year phenomenon. He's acting the same as he's been for 35 years as a businessman. He hypes, he sells, he exaggerates numbers, he takes numbers that are good and claims them as his. That's what he's always done. And
what you see is what you get.
That's correct.
In a sense, that's what the Americans.
One thing that was
correct, and I guess it's already discounted. Over the last year, Americans have gotten used to it. So how do they react to this? It's still evolving. But right now, the economy's pretty good. His approval ratings are still fairly low, which speaks to his message and his style more than how the country is doing. But this was the kind of style I think a lot of Americans would like to see more of. We'll see if he then gets on Twitter later today and walks it back.
And of course this morning, I think this news in America was the question of whether he had tried to fire Mueller, the special prosecutor. And I would expect in the United States that that's actually getting a lot of play. And of course he did also make that comment. He said, when I was a businessman, I used to get a lot of media attention as though it just came from the sky, but I think he had something to do with generating that media attention.
All right, so just going to wrap this by perhaps getting a final closing line from each of you on overall Davos 2018. What did you make of it?
Well, it was an extraordinary year this year because more heads of state here than many, many years. Narendra Modi kicking things off and US President Donald Trump ending the week. But I have to say, I do feel like in terms of the media attention given to the World Economic Forum this year, it was hijacked by the White House.
Yeah, he stole the show. President Trump stole the show. I think to me what was striking, the other thing here is cryptocurrencies, blockchain. That wasn't very evident last year. This year that was the big bubble all up and down the promenade.
Yeah, crypto headquarters, I think, is what one
There was a
saying.
crypto village.
Crypto village. Well, you know, bubble is what
right. Well,
the other people say about it.
If you had to boil it down to kind of one line, last year it felt like doom and gloom, like the sword of Damocles was holding up over the entire event's head. This year, a little bit of euphoria, like an exhale that, again, the sky isn't falling. The economy is fairly good around the world and very good in a lot of countries. And that made it a more optimistic, ebullient summit than last year by far. And again, the fact that Trump comes here and again, you end with a bang.
Well, when we started off, it did feel as if the sky was about to fall on our head. We saw on the traffic in the road. But the sun is shining now.
The sun is shining.
I think a lot of people leave feeling very optimistic, but they also have the feeling, I think, that something's going to happen.
Well, listen, last year everybody was pessimistic, and we had a great year, so beware. Everyone's very optimistic.
Beware
right
when
now.
the sun is shining.
Okay.
But thank you all so much. It's a pleasure having us. And that's it for our coverage of Davos 2018. We will no doubt be back next year, assuming that the sky remains up and the world stays in good shape, which I'm sure it will. We'll be back next year. Bye for now.